Okay, so this week on Joyful Eating, we have a bit of a different format of actually having a blind date with someone who emailed me randomly through the internet. So today I have with me Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, and I haven't met Betsy before, but she had emailed me and said, "Hey, let's talk midlife vitality with your audience." And I was like, let's do it. So welcome to Joyful Eating for Menopause, Dr. Betsy. So do you want to just first start out and maybe share a bit about yourself and why you reached out to me in the beginning?
Sure. It's kind of scary. You never know who you might find on the internet. I'm Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. I'm the first board certified female urogynecologist in the United States. So it's like a combination of urology, like bladder health, and gynecology, so pelvic health. And so I'm also triple board certified and working on my fourth board certification, integrative health and wellness with Dr. Andrew Weil currently.
Oh,
And
amazing.
so you might be like, okay, what does bladder health and vaginal health and midlife and eating healthy all have to do with each other? And I think that's probably really why I'm here, because at least in the United States, in our traditional healthcare system, they don't ever look at food. They don't look at eating healthy, don't look at living healthy. It's just like it's all unfortunately putting band-aids on things by throwing medicines at symptoms. And unfortunately, that's the way things are. And I always go back to Hippocrates said in 440 BC, let food be thy medicine. And I'm like, wait a minute, why aren't we going back to the basics? So I really come at it from looking at everything from like wellness and lifestyle and what we're doing with sleep and eating and how it all contributes to our health and wellness, and especially more so with a focus on individuals 40s and up. So, yeah.
Yeah, right. In that midlife space. Yeah, amazing. So what's the biggest problem that people come to you with?
Yeah, so I'm mainly what is called a menopause and andropause clinic. So I actually started off with doing women's health and menopause, and most people understand that starting in the 40s, 50s, that women are going through these changes and they start losing their periods, and that there's a lot of other symptoms that go along with that. But then what was happening is my female patients, they were feeling so much better. They'd be like, "Can you take care of my husband?" So then we started, the men were like, what's going on? And then we started bringing them into it. And actually, it's funny, I was just talking to some people yesterday and I was telling them that I have a menopause and andropause clinic in New Jersey in the United States. And everyone was, okay, yeah, we get it. And then when they all of a sudden it clicked in their head and they go, wait a minute, wait, menopause we've heard of. Like, what is this andropause thing that you're talking about? And I'm like, well, guess what? They don't get off of this free. They get to go through the same similar changes, and that their hormones are starting to drop in their 40s. And so they're getting very much symptoms like women do, like brain fog and belly fat, and they're working out and things aren't looking the way they used
They
to. And they
used
start
to,
getting
right?
the dad bod. And so, yes, or decreased sex drive. So we're seeing this on both sides of things. So, yeah.
Of course, right, right. I'd never thought of that. That's really, yeah, that's great. So
Yeah.
you're helping both.
Yes, definitely both. Definitely both.
Yeah.
So, and then connecting it with what you're doing with the food and eating healthy and listening to your body. I mean, honestly, I could stand here and tell you probably 90% of all medical conditions are either caused or worsened by things that we're putting into our body. And so maybe you were able to get away with it when you're in your 20s, like maybe living on Doritos and Oreos and things like that. But now all of a sudden with the decreasing hormones that starts happening around 40, you can't really you can't really get away from it. You can't exercise a bad diet. You can't like all of a sudden go do the like, well, I just won't eat for a week and lose weight type of thing that might have worked when you were in your 20s. That stuff is not working anymore. And now things are really start to catch up because you're also dealing with the stress of the body from those lowering hormones.
Yeah,
So,
right. Right. So what do you recommend people as they're like, how do you recommend people change like what they're eating and
yeah.
to to mitigate those problems?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is I look at everything in the body as either it's like stress or not stress. And so, because anything where the body is stressed, it's going to hold on to weight. It's going to cause inflammation and cause other diseases. And from a food-based standpoint, if we look at the stress, and food can be a big stressor if we're eating a lot of processed foods. So I always tell my clients that your food should fall into four categories. If it somehow at one point it walked, it flew, it swam, or it grew, then you should be eating it. Because I always tell people, like, Doritos don't grow on trees, there's no free range Twinkies. So we really need to be picking those things. And also going back to what happened in, how we evolved. Now, I definitely believe in refrigeration. I'm not going to say get rid of your refrigerators, right? Because there's
Me
a
too.
lot of food.
I'm a big fan of the refrigeration. It was
Oh,
a good
yeah.
invention.
Yeah. So I'm not going to say get rid of your refrigerators, but like as cave people, we were probably eating a lot more bacteria. And so we
Ah,
really, because there was no refrigerators in the caveman times. So we really need to be replacing a lot of that bacteria that keeps us healthy with either probiotics or specifically in our food sources with fermented foods. So I make sure that everyone eats at least fermented foods every single day. And then the other thing is, well, the fermented foods like to live off of fiber. And we always say people are not getting enough fiber nowadays. So you need to make sure we're getting enough fiber. They say 25 to 30 grams a day. I say even more so. And then adding fermented foods, and that looks like anything from kimchi, fermented sauerkrauts, kombucha, fermented teas. If you don't have problems with dairy, then yogurts or kefir or something that in some way has been fermented, because they're finding, this is making makes me so excited. I love going down the rabbit hole of the research on this. But there's this connection between the gut and the brain, and the gut and the brain and our hormones, and the gut and the brain and our pelvic health. And so, if we don't have a healthy gut because we're not eating whole foods and we're not replenishing with healthy bacteria, we do know that 90% of our happy hormone is made in the gut. So, without serotonin, our happy hormone, we're going to be more likely to have anxiety, depression. 80% of our immune system is made in our gut. And if we're not eating those healthy foods, then we're more likely to get sick. But then there's also been studies directly relating gut health and libido and sex drive. Because
oh,
if you think
right.
about it, yeah, because anything, so if the gut's not healthy, the gut tends to get inflamed, and we get this thing called leaky gut. And things can kind of, food particles and things from insecticides and pesticides can now leak into our system. And now it causes inflammation in our body, and that can lead to heart disease and brain disease and autoimmune disease. But the other thing is anything that the body senses as inflammatory, it's going to suppress the processes that happen when we're relaxed. And the processes that happen when we relax are we digest, we heal, and we reproduce. So anything having to do with reproduction, whether that's actual reproduction or sex drive, is going to be decreased. Hormone production is going to be affected by this. So we also know from a standpoint of weight gain, you're not going to lose weight. I'm seeing so many people now that are doing these GLP-1 medications, and some people are losing weight, great. Some people are not. And the people that are not losing weight on these medicines, I really would challenge them to look into what is the inflammatory cause of this. Because if your body's inflamed in any way, you're just going to hold on to the weight, because the body doesn't know the difference between you've just been in a horrific accident and now it's got to hold on to all its reserves to keep you alive, versus you're trying to diet and now you're using these medications, the gut microbiome is maybe going off, and now that's a stressor. So it's really, I think, super fascinating how all these things intertwine and connect. And like I said, a lot of this stuff is still happening when you're in your 20s. It's not we can ignore these processes, but it's catching up with us in our 40s, our 50s, our 60s, and beyond.
Right, right, right. Okay, so you're a big fan of the gut health, the core pillar, all healthy.
Health. And
Like,
really, and honestly, that goes back to what are we? They say you are what you
yeah.
eat. Well, guess what? They're right.
Right, right. And so, okay, so you recommend fermented foods for sure. And you said I'm getting enough fiber, Dr. Betsy. So uh, like, uh, yeah, what sort of fiber sources do you recommend people?
I would prefer natural fiber sources. Anything that's as natural as possible would be great. Usually coming from vegetables or legumes or, even fruits, more so focusing on like vegetable. I mean, grains too. Sometimes people just
It's
have to
too
get it
hard.
someplace. And so we have a product, if you have it there, I'm sure you have something similar. We have a product here in the United States called Benefiber, and it's not gritty. And I'll be just put that in your coffee or your drink in the
Okay.
morning because it basically doesn't get gritty and a way to hide your fiber and a sneaky way to get extra fiber.
Right. So is it a soluble fiber? Right.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
I thought we're getting something, but I'd
Yeah. What
rather it
about,
come from whole food whole
yeah,
sources.
so like things seeds and chia seeds, that type
Yes.
of thing?
Oh, yes, love that stuff. And then it
Yeah.
was interesting. The other thing, and you actually brought this up in one of your past podcasts, you were talking about the protein and the protein powder. So it's funny because that's another thing that we see in mid-age is we start losing about 8% of our muscle mass starting in our 30s. So if we don't exercise and don't do strength training, we're going to start losing that muscle, but we also need to be getting more protein. And you brought up something that I still question about the protein, and I haven't found anything specifically on this, but you brought up a really good point was what about all these artificial sweeteners that are in the protein powders and how is that affecting our gut health? And I'm always going, all right, that's probably not the best thing. And probably our protein needs to also come from whole food that we gotta, I mean, I always say to people to avoid processed foods, but now we're starting to get a lot of processed healthy foods. And then I kind of start wondering how are they affecting a lot of times they are putting these artificial sweeteners into these
Into
processed
it. And
like
also, yeah, have we evolved to eat a large quantity of whey protein or
yeah,
whey protein
exactly.
isolate? It's not even like whole whey, it's like specific. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Okay. And what about for back to fiber, Dr. Betsy? What about psyllium? Psyllium
Yeah,
husks?
I do like that one too. I know some people will get GI upset with that one more so than some of the other ones. But that's the other thing. It's, when you get bloated or maybe a little gassy or maybe have problems with the fiber, it might not necessarily be the fiber that's the problem. It may be the type of bacteria that's in your gut. And so sometimes it just takes a little bit of a transition period for that to work itself out. So I just tell people if you're starting to get that problem, maybe back off. There's actually was a fascinating study where they took rats and they decided they were feeding rats the standard American diet we have here at McDonald's and things. They were feeding the rats bad food. And they took some of the rats and they put them automatically on a healthy food diet with,
All whole foods, right?
vegetables and fruit. And then they took another group and they let them eat a little bit of the unhealthy diet and a little bit of the healthy diet. And they actually found out in the study, the goal is the more diverse your gut is, the more different types of bacteria you have in the gut, the healthier you are. And they found that the rats that had the mixed diet actually did better and have more diversity. So now
I
with that, it
love
doesn't
that
mean
study. That's so cool. So
with
it's like,
that, it doesn't mean just keep eating McDonald's or whatever, but I see this every year around January when people are doing their New Year's resolutions. They're eating maybe not so great, and then, or not, especially during the holidays, and then all of a sudden the New Year's comes and they're like, oh, I'm going to start eating healthy. And they start eating salads and kale, and they're eating all this stuff, and they're getting GI upset, and they're like, they can't tolerate it. And they're like, I'm eating healthy. Why do I feel horrible? And I try to tell them, listen, you don't have the types of gut bacteria in your
yet.
system now to by digesting that food. So you can't just switch overnight. You got to slowly incorporate it. And I usually tell people give themselves anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks to kind of switch over to that healthy diet. And eventually you'll start kind of building up those healthy bacteria that will help you digest those foods. So it could be not necessarily that you're having problems with the fiber, it could be the types of bacteria and you're like what's there is just not tolerating it or it's going crazy and producing a lot of gas because now you're feeding it. So Yeah.
Yeah, right, right. And I love that approach because when we make incremental changes, it's easier for us to do, hey, rather than just like
Yes.
all the big sweeping changes. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. And I hadn't seen that study on the rats with the mixed diet actually having the best outcome.
There's
It's
another, I go down these rabbit holes with these studies. There was actually another really cool study which to actually connected gut microbiome and obesity, which was really, really super interesting. And that they actually took twins, human twins, where one twin was heavy and one was thin, and they kind of extracted their gut microbiome and fed that to these rats. And the rats that got the microbiome from the heavy twin became heavy, and the rat that got the one from the thin twin became thin. And then they took the rats, the heavy twin and the thin twin, and they switched their diets, and the rats switched. So they were able to connect that there is something going on with the microbiome, and that sometimes we see people that are heavy, and it's not a willpower thing. It's
yeah,
not, you could be dieting all you want and maybe it's not working. It could be that there is this component of the microbiome that needs to be kind of switched, and once again that can switch over time with healthy foods. And as the science goes on, they're starting to try to find like which bacteria is causing this. And officially I don't think we're at the complete area to say, and then they're starting to sell certain bacteria as probiotics to be, oh, this is the one that's going to make you lose weight. The science hasn't really caught up this specifically to say it's this one or that one. The biggest thing is to have a diverse microbiome. And unfortunately, people who are not healthy tend not to have that diverse microbiome. But Tibetan monks, they've done research on Tibetan monks, they have the most diverse microbiome of any group of people on the planet, and they tend to be the healthiest.
right.
So, yeah.
Okay. So does the meditation, does that play into the microbiome as well? If you're more
It,
zen, does that create a
it
healthier gut?
It does. It does. Because they found that
Right.
stress, even mental stress, can affect gut inflammation and can affect the microbiome. And I know people can't be meditating 8 hours a day, a Tibetan monk, but they can incorporate some kind of stress relief, whether that's listening to music or dancing or a hobby or some meditation. And that actually will affect the microbiome and your overall health. And it's great for decreasing cortisol, which is your stress hormone, which all ties into
Yeah.
this too. Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
yeah,
Yeah. And then cortisol interacts with the sex hormones as well, doesn't it? So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Right. Right. Okay. Great. So I guess, Dr. Betsy, if someone's listening to this and they're like, right, I really want to improve my gut health so I can improve my all the benefits that I get from that. So do you think just starting with increasing fiber is the best first
Yeah,
step?
I think, yeah, if you had to pick a one first step, I would say increasing the fiber.
And
And and then the next I'd be adding for some sort of fermented foods into the diet every day. And then following with more vegetables, more grains,
yeah,
more things that yeah, yeah. And I said that kind of goes back to the front first step is with the getting more fiber from those things too.
yeah. So
So
rather than thinking, oh, I have to start eating salads all the time, actually just adding in some fiber intentionally.
yeah.
Yeah. And does our fiber requirements increase as we age?
In some ways, I haven't seen them specifically on they we say 20 to 30 grams a day, but I'm saying people that go more from 30 to 40, fit 30 to 40. I mean, if you go over, it's too much fiber. No one really overdoses on fiber unless you don't drink enough fluids. That's going to be the only problem. And that's another area where people really struggle is 75%, there was a study that looked at 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated. I'm sure that translates into
Of
other
course, yeah.
areas too. And we need that. We kind of need not only that for all of our cells, but we need it for our gut health, kind of be flushing through there. And you also don't want that fiber just kind of caking up and holding things in place. And interesting enough, constipation is actually directly related to hormones because no matter what individual you are, male, female, our gut, especially our large colon where we tend to get constipated, if our stool is sitting there, you actually can start reabsorbing estrogen out of that stool, and it can affect our hormone levels because one of the areas that we get rid of that hormone is through stool.
True, right. Right.
So,
All
so
right. So
and this is something sometimes I see people who have problems with their hormones, and one of the simple things we just do is getting them to poop. Like, so that, and we say fiber, but you've got to be fiber and fluids,
fiber
getting enough
plus the
fluid.
water as well. So that's super
Yeah,
important. Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Actually, this is maybe really very timely for me, Dr. Betsy. It's like, okay. Because yeah, right, right. So when things are getting blocked up, look at the fluids as well as the fiber. Because
Yeah, yeah, because you're doing all the fiber and it's just sitting there and it's becoming concrete. That's not good. So we need a
that's
little
not good.
fluid to make sure things are lubricated too. So,
Yeah, got it,
yeah.
got it. Right. So that's a
And
super,
some people will use coffee as a way to get
ah,
themselves to go, but they found out it's not necessarily the caffeine, it's the warm fluid that triggers them to go. So some people you don't need, well, decaf will work, warm
okay. So decaf
tea,
will work as
warm
well, right?
water. Yeah, warm water. It's the warm water that they found can stimulate the colon. So, yeah.
Okay, there we go. Amazing. Wow, Dr. Betsy. So much here. Okay, but I love, yeah, so that first step of fiber and fluids, make sure and then look at fermented foods and then look at more vegetables, less processed food as a strategy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Very
and
cool.
our protein requirements do increase as we age. So that's important to make sure we're still getting our protein. And I don't have the greatest answers of how to do that because it is really hard to eat whole proteins that much in a day. They do recommend usually it's one gram per pound of I no per a kilogram of ideal weight is what the general recommendations are. And then that actually up if it's somebody who's actually looking to lose weight.
Yeah, right.
So,
So it's kind of hard to overeat protein.
yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So if someone wants to find out more about your work, Dr. Betsy, where should they head?
Oh yeah, I'm all over social media as long as I don't get kicked off of Instagram again. So,
You've been kicked off, oh, right, the sexual health side of things.
yeah, yeah. So I've learned now what I can say, what I can't say on Instagram. But yeah, I'm on Instagram. Either there is Dr. Betsy Greenleaf or Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, the men's health. I have that separated out. Or I'm on TikTok. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm everywhere. I also have a website called the Pelvic Floor Store, and we ship to Australia.
Hey,
And we also have pauseinstitute.com. So that's the International Pause Institute for Menopause and Andropause.
all
But yeah,
right.
come find me on social media. I love interacting with people. So
Okay, well, I'll put all the links to your socials in the and those websites in the show notes. Yeah.
awesome.
Excellent. Oh, so good to meet
Well,
you, Dr. Betsy.
yeah, thank you so much, Jules.